Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going deep on something, well, let's face it, it's everywhere these days, right? Social media.
Oh, yeah. Can't get away from it.
Exactly. And our jumping off point today, a partial script from a Christian podcast called The Giants.
Interesting.
Yeah, they actually, they take on this whole social media thing from a faith perspective, which I thought was a really cool angle.
Makes sense, though, doesn't it? I mean, it does touch every part of our lives these days.
Right. So they go into the pros and cons, the good, the bad, and then they've got some advice on how to navigate it all wisely.
Okay, I'm listening.
So the source material starts off actually by focusing on the positives, which I appreciate. It's not all doom and gloom. And one thing they highlight is how social media helps us reconnect with people.
Yeah. I mean, we've all got those stories, right? Like finding old friends or...
Oh, totally. It happens all the time. They even have a story in there about reconnecting with old friends. And it reminded me of this time I actually found a long-lost high school friend through Facebook, believe it or not. And it turned out we were living in the same city.
No way!
Yeah, and we've been catching up ever since, so... I mean, it really does work. Have you had any experiences like that?
All the time. That's what's so powerful about it, right? It
Yeah.
bridges those distances.
Yeah.
But it's not just like person connections either, is it? We've got access to so much information now because of it. Like news, education, you name it. It's all right there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I use it for all sorts of things. Staying informed is a big one. Although I have to admit, I do get sucked into those, endless scrolling sometimes. But beyond the news and all that, I find myself, gravitating towards online communities, you know? Places where people share my interests. I'm part of a couple of writing groups that are just phenomenal.
Oh, cool. I can see that. I love that.
Yeah, and it's like that old saying, iron sharpens iron, which the source actually ties back to Proverbs, Proverbs 27.12.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it got me thinking, are the online communities I'm a part of really sharpening me, helping me grow, encouraging those positive discussions? What about you?
Wow, yeah. That's a really good question to ask yourself.
Right. And it makes you realize that all this anonymity online, it can be a double-edged sword. You get incredible support. But then there's also, the not-so-great stuff.
Yeah, that's where things can get a little dicey. And this is where the source material dives into some of those downsides. Starting with, the comparison trap.
Oh, the comparison trap. It's like the curse of social media, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, we all experience it to some degree.
Oh, yeah. Especially in that, curated world, everyone's just highlighting their highlight reel, right? It's easy to get caught up in that.
Absolutely. Feeling inadequate and all that, you're not measuring up.
Totally. And they actually, the source, they mentioned some pretty sobering stats about the impact on mental health, especially for younger users.
A valid concern, for sure. And then you've got the whole cyberbullying thing too, online harassment, which to their credit, the source doesn't shy away from that.
Right. It's tough, but I do like that they focus more on building resilience, instead of just dwelling on all the negative aspects.
Yeah. How do we deal with it? They've got some suggestions, right?
Yeah.
What really jumped out at you?
Well, for me, the idea of setting boundaries was a big one. It just makes so much sense, We need to be intentional with our time and energy online. It's so easy to just get swept up in everything. Information overload, opinions flying around.
Constantly.
Right? And disconnecting, even for a little bit, can be so restorative. The source even connects this to, I think it's 1 Corinthians 14.33, where it talks about God being a God of peace, not disorder.
It's a good one.
Yeah, it's like a reminder that we don't have to subject ourselves to that chaos all the time,
No, we don't. It's about finding that balance, which, let's be real, can be tough. I mean, disconnecting entirely, not exactly realistic in today's world, is it?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? So how do we find that balance?
Well, I think the source actually gives us some pretty practical advice on this. It's not about, going off the grid completely. It's more about being mindful how we engage, limiting screen time.
Okay, yeah.
Being picky about who you follow.
I like that, curating your feed.
Exactly. Make sure it aligns with your values, your goals.
That's a good point. I actually, I recently did a big unfollowing spree. I was following all these accounts that were just so visually appealing, but honestly, they just made me feel anxious, inadequate. So I just hit that unfollow button. And I gotta say, it's been really freeing.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
It's so important, right? Being intentional with what you're letting into your headspace.
Totally.
Recognizing the impact it has
on
you, mentally, emotionally.
Huge.
And, they also talk about mindful engagement, not just scrolling mindlessly, but really thinking about how you're interacting online.
Okay, so like thinking before you post. Being aware of the impact of your words.
Exactly. That's the one.
Yeah, that's, I'll be honest, that's something I struggle with sometimes. It's so easy to just like react, you know? Especially if you see something that triggers you.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It's hard, but I think the source has a really interesting take on this whole thing. Like, it reminds us that even in the digital world, our words have power.
Oh, they definitely do.
You know, and they connect this idea to Ephesians 4.29, which talks about, you know, building others up with your words, not tearing them down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a good reminder that we have a choice, right?
Yeah.
Like, are we adding to the negativity, or are we going to be a force for something good?
That really hits home. It's like we have to bring our values into this digital space.
Absolutely.
Make sure our online actions are, you know, reflecting who we really are.
Yeah. And I think that brings up a question, actually. Like, how do we balance authenticity with, well, the curated nature of social media? It's like this constant tension, you know?
Totally. Like, do we show our true selves or do we try to project this perfect image?
Exactly. And I had this moment a while back where I realized I was spending way too much time, like, crafting the perfect Instagram post.
Oh, yeah. I've been there.
Agonizing over captions, filters, the whole 9 yards.
Uh-huh.
All for those likes and validation.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it just made me step back and ask, like, is this really me? Or am I just projecting this image?
Right. It's so easy to fall into that trap.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, like, how much of what we see online is actually genuine?
Oh, yeah. How much is just a facade?
Hard to tell, right?
It really is.
And I think that's where critical thinking comes in. Like, we can't just accept everything at face value. We need to be discerning, question motives, consider different perspectives.
You mean like not taking everything so seriously?
Well, yeah, and also remembering that everyone's presenting a version of themselves, not necessarily their whole self.
It's like we're all playing a role in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, how do we do that, you know? Navigate that space without becoming cynical or jaded. It's easy to just get caught up in all the negativity.
It is a delicate balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think it goes back to intentionality. Like, if we're intentional about who we follow, the content we engage with, the energy we bring to our interactions, I think we can make it a more positive experience,
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
more authentic. Actually, the source asks the listeners something interesting here. They're like, have you ever questioned whether your online persona, you know, really aligns with your values?
You know, that's funny you should mention that because there was this time where I got like totally sucked into these online debates.
Oh, those can be rough.
Yeah. And looking back, I realized I wasn't really engaging in a way that reflected my values or contributed anything meaningful. It was just noise, negativity.
It's so easy to do, though, right?
Yeah, it really is. So it was a wake-up call for me. Like I needed to be more mindful of how I was using my voice online.
It's like those echo chambers, you know? Everyone just shouting their opinions, no real dialogue.
Right.
And it's exhausting. And this is where the source brings up a really interesting idea. They talk about social media as a tool.
A tool. Okay, I'm curious.
Yeah. Like any tool, it can be used for good or it can be used for, well, not so good.
That makes sense. It's all about how you use it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we can use it to connect, to learn, to inspire, or, you know, we can use it to spread negativity, misinformation. It's our choice.
That's a really powerful way to look at it, I think.
It is. And it puts the responsibility back on us.
Totally. We're not just at the mercy of these algorithms, you know?
Right.
We have choice.
And speaking of guidance, the source actually brings up this verse from Psalm 119.105. Your word is a lamp to my feet, a light on my path.
Oh, that's a good one.
Right. And they're basically saying that our values, our beliefs, they should be guiding us online too, just like they do in real life.
Okay, so we're not supposed to just like abandon our faith when we go online?
Exactly. We bring it with us.
It should shape how we act online, how we present ourselves.
Precisely. It's part of who we are, right?
Totally. So then that brings up another question, like how can we be a light in the digital world? It's got to be tough.
It is a challenge, isn't it?
It's so easy to get caught up in all the negativity.
Yeah, it's like, can one voice really make a difference?
Right.
But I think the source is pushing us to think differently. Instead of asking, what can I get from social media? Maybe we should be asking, what can I give?
Well, that's good.
How can I use this platform, even if it's small, to do something good?
Yeah, I love that. Spread kindness, encouragement, truth.
That's what it's all about. Choosing to be a light instead of succumbing to the darkness. And it leads me to a final thought for our listeners. We've talked about the good and the bad of social media, about setting boundaries, being mindful, but in the end, what kind of digital legacy do we want to leave? What kind of footprint will we leave on the world? Something to think about.
Wow, that's deep. It's not something we often consider, is it? But you're right, with our online presence being so, well, permanent, it's worth thinking about.
Absolutely. It's about more than just likes and shares. It's about lasting impact. What do we want to be known for online?
It's like building a digital reputation.
Yeah,
But it's deeper than that, right?
it is. It's about aligning our actions with our values, striving to make a positive contribution, even in this digital space. And I think that brings us full circle, back to the source's idea of social media as a tool.
Oh, yeah, I see that.
We get to choose how we use it,
Yeah.
to build or to destroy, to connect or to isolate.
That's powerful. It's a reminder that even online, our actions have consequences.
Exactly. It's not just passive consumption. We're shaping the digital landscape with every post, every comment, every like. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think the biggest takeaway for everyone is this. You have agency. You have a voice. You have the power to make a difference.
It's not about being perfect or having a million followers. It's about showing up as you are, engaging thoughtfully, using whatever platform you have, big or small, to spread kindness and, well, hopefully a little wisdom along the way.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Who knows? Maybe we can even inspire others to do the same. And that ripple effect, that's where the real change happens.
That's what I love about this whole conversation. It gives me hope. You know, social media, it's not perfect. It probably never will be. But it's a space we can all contribute to making better.
So well said. And as you continue on your own social media journeys, remember what we've talked about today.
Be mindful.
Be intentional.
Be authentic.
Set those boundaries.
Curate your feed.
Engage with purpose. And most importantly, let your values be your guide
Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive.
into the wild world of social media.
Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring. It really makes you think about your online legacy.
Yeah,
It's like, what do we want to leave behind?
it's a big question.
It is. But like you said, it's not just about those fleeting likes or shares.
Right, it's about like a lasting impact,
Exactly. And I think it goes back to that whole social media as a tool idea.
Oh yeah, for sure.
We have the power to choose, how we're going to use it.
To build up or tear down.
Exactly, to connect or to isolate.
And even though it can feel like so vast and impersonal sometimes, this whole online world,
Oh, yeah.
our actions still matter.
They do. We're not just passively watching anymore.
No, we're active participants.
We're shaping the digital world.
Every time we interact, we're leaving a mark.
So as we wrap this up, I think the biggest takeaway, at least for me, is that we have agency.
You got it.
We have a voice, and we have the power to make a difference.
And it doesn't have to be this big, grand thing either.
No, not at all. It's not about having a million followers or being some kind of influencer.
Right. It's just about showing up authentically,
Being you.
engaging thoughtfully, using your platform, whatever it is, to spread some good.
Spread some kindness.
A little bit of wisdom never hurts either.
Right. And who knows, maybe by doing that, we'll inspire other people to do the same.
That ripple effect is where it's at.
Exactly. It's what gives me hope, honestly, about social media.
You too?
It's not perfect. It probably never will be, but we can make it better.
Couldn't agree more. So as you head back out into the digital world, remember what we've talked about today.